want to thank you for your generous gift, and you can be sure it'll be useful to us in the church. We'll turn services over now, Brother Jim.
Thank you, Dr. Frederick. You want to turn in your hymn books to 632. 632. We're going to talk about time again. Now, I sat down and done a little ciphering. Does anybody know what ciphering is now? You know what? Hold your hand if you know what it is to cipher. Oh my goodness. They used to call that in school, we're in math and stuff, we're going to cipher. Yeah. Well, we're going to cipher. I get some comments. Now, if I've done it right, I took 24, and that means hours in a day, right? Stay with me. And there's 7 days in a week, right? Now, here's the clincher. If 7 times 24 is 168, I get 56. Is that right? You've been following me. Do it in your head. I'm having a lot of fun. What I'm talking about is there's 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week. What do you do with your time? You say, I've never thought about it. There's a field now that's called time management. Especially when you get into bigger companies and production is based on time. If I can make 3 of those things and do it in 1 hour, the price changes. But if it takes me 3 hours to do one, the price goes up. Our life is no different. Time. And so I took, I done a little ciphering again. So I said, if I take 2 hours on Sunday, Sunday school, church, that's 200, that's 2 hours out of 168. And then if I take 48 for work, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. Some of you are going to say, I work more than that. Maybe you do. But if you figure 6 8-hour days, you shouldn't be working over 6 days. That's 48. And then, if you sleep 36, you total that up, it's 98. Where did the others go? You figure all that up, and you get into time management. You say, well, God didn't get in that situation. Yeah, He has. He said, I'll give you all the time that you're going to need. And the Bible speaks of 70 which is, help me cipher, how many? Somebody. Come on, get involved. 70. And then it says, if by reason of strength your years be 80, which is what? 80. I had this thing go with me and Sue were talking. I said, Sue, do well to get to 80, and I may not. But I'm getting close enough to it, I pushed it up to 90. The amount of time that you're given on this earth is not as important as how you spend that amount of time. I've known of people in their 40s that has just brought so much into their life and they're affected so much. And then I've seen people live to be 90. I couldn't tell you what they done. Probably at 90, they can't tell you what they done. I'm having a lot of fun right now. I'm slipping a little bit. Danny will tell you that. But I am a happy camper. And Sue and I have talked about it. I want to ask you a question this morning. Have you got your house in order? You got your house in order. You got a spiritual house, you got a physical house. You'd be surprised at the people that don't have their physical house in order and something happens to them and your kids have got a lot to go through. You call it premonition or whatever you want to, but in the last year, I had this feeling, Jimmy, get your house, your physical house in order. And so we tried to do that. Who's going to give what you got in your left? Who gets what? You want to keep down fights? Put it in writing. They may not like it, but put it in writing. In our spiritual house, that is the most important. I was blessed of the Lord at 22-year-old to be in this place. And I have enjoyed it all. I've been with probably the majority of the people that we started with are gone. They've gone. They've gone home. And I learned so much from those people that helped me. And then there's a lot of people that are sitting here today that I enjoy being with you. And sometimes you're happy, and sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're worried, at other times you're not. Once we understand the cycle of life and time, manage your time. In the book of Ecclesiastes, let's look at that. In the 3rd chapter, I want to start with the 2nd verse. Time. There is a good formula for being successful. I've talked to people in life who hadn't been as successful, and I said, well, how did you do it? I don't know, I just done it. And then I've talked to people that they planned their work and they worked their plan. If you do one of those, you'll fail. If you do them both, you can be successful. How has God figured into your plan for your life? Have you even thought about it? And once you plan and you include Him in, then you work your plan by doing exactly what we're doing here today. Coming together, listening to the voice of God, and to be with friends that love you and care about you. It's the greatest thing in the world. Chapter 3 and verse 2 of Ecclesiastes. A time to be born and a time to die. We believe those. Why do we believe that's so strong? There's a time to be born because we see babies born. People are born. And then we see people die. We don't have any problem with that. The problem is when we get into areas that you have to accept by faith that we can't see. And in the cycle of life, from the time you're born until the time you leave here, that's promised. It's going to happen. I don't know when. I don't know where. I don't know the method. And all of that really doesn't matter. I have had the privilege of meeting a lot of people in my lifetime, and I saw successful people in business and everything else, and they were the most miserable person that ever was spiritually. The world right now, have you talked to anybody this week that told you, don't worry about things, it's going to be all right? Anybody raise your hand? That's exactly what I thought, and I can tell you that answer before you did it. In our spiritual body, we should not be worried. Worry will wear you down physically, it will wear you down mentally, it will wear you down in every aspect of life. If you can change it, change it. If you can't, put it in the hands of God. And if we're prepared to meet Him, and we've done the things He said, that worry should be eliminated. It should be eliminated. And we're going to worry over material things to a point. We should. Because we need to live in this world we can live in it and not be of it. And I don't mean this to sound harsh, but people set their own traps. We set our traps that gives us problems and worries in life that should not have happened. We let our eyes see things that we want, and the mind, once it penetrates that, it says, I need that, I've got to have that. And we go after it. And then when we get it, we can't afford to pay for it. There's not a person in this house, and I hope and pray you never do it. Do not blame God for your situation, because God didn't make it. We made the situation. God has given us an avenue in this present life to be happy if we will listen and take hold of it. If we fail to listen, life itself can be cruel. Little children get hurt for no reason of their own. Men and women get hurt for no reason of their own. Wars start for no reason at all. When you analyze life, I'm selfish. I really am. I'm going to take care of Jimmy. And my advice to you would be, take care of yourself. Don't you leave that up to somebody else. Don't do that. You'll foul up. But if you take care of yourself in your relationship with God, in the promise of immortality, what would you give now physically to live forever and to be free? We would give anything we've got. And yet, every time we sing songs, every time we say prayers, every time we give an invitation for God to look at us and say, what are you doing to yourself? That's what God did to me. He said, look what you're doing to yourself. And not only yourself, you got a wife now, you got a kid coming, you've got friends and neighbors, you've got brothers and sisters. None of them went to church. And every time we got together, it was a brawl or something like that. And when the Lord changed my life, you're not going to believe this, but they changed too. Do you think you don't matter to somebody this morning? Do you think you don't matter to your little children? Don't you think that you matter to your wife or the wife to the husband? These are the areas where we get ourselves in trouble. And he goes on, and he looks at this, and he just tells us there's time to pull things up. You plant it, he said there's a time to pluck it up. He said there is a time to kill. We say, oh no, it says thou shalt not kill. Put it over on the wall. If you literally take that literally, you're not going to have anything to eat. Because it has to be killed. What he's saying, in the real teaching of it, you're not to murder. And there's a difference. There's a big difference. But he said there's a time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep. And that's fine. Somebody says, well, big boys don't cry. I want to tell you something. It may not be outwardly, but big boys hurt inside to the point of unbearable anguish. I never taught my children Don't you cry, because that's wrong. I was the one who's wrong, if I told them that. The Bible says there is a time to weep. It's a release of emotions that a lot of times that are held inside, and people's life are miserable. And so the Bible said there's a time to get rid of that. He said there is a time to laugh. There's a time to mourn. And a time to dance. I remember years ago, they'd say, oh, it's wrong to dance. Well, it is certain types of dancing. But if I do a little, I ain't going to do a little jig. You don't want to see that. I went to a class reunion, and a young lady and I were voted the best dancers in the class. So this was in the 50s, and boy, that was good dancing. And I thought I'd have some fun out of her. I whispered to her, would you want to dance with him? She said, get out of here. And she was right. I would have probably fell over. Can you laugh? We don't have any problem laughing at somebody else do it. Can you laugh at yourself? If you can laugh at yourself, you're going to do fine. Then you can laugh with other people. But my whole point of this reading this morning is to look at the way that God works. Until we understand how something works or somebody works, we can be confused. But you can look at the beauty of what comes through. A time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. It depends on what you're doing. If you're wanting to build something, you gather them. If they're in your way, you get them out of the way. That's the same thing in our spiritual life. That is the same thing in our spiritual life. There is a time to get rid of it. If you're ever going to be happy, when's it going to be? Another day? Another time? Tell me about time. How much do you have? How much do I have? And so inside of our spiritual life, we need to throw away the stones that makes our heart bitter, that makes our life unhappy. And then that ebbs out like the currents, and it affects our children, it affects our home, it affects our community, it affects everything. And he said there's a time to throw it out, and there's a time to gather. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. I don't know about you all, but I'm a hugger. And I guess when people see you, I want you to look. What's in their mind? Aha! Whose mind is having the bad thoughts? If they see me hug someone, I do it because I love them. And one of the most comforting things that a child can feel is when they're pulled to their mother's bosom and they're cradled. Are we any different? Are we too old to care? Are we too old to be happy? Are we too young to be happy? Talking about teenagers today, I'd like to get with you all sometime and see what you're going through, and then I'll tell you about what I went through. One of the greatest things a parent can do, if you forget what you was at 16, don't try to talk to your child. You'll understand better, and they will too, if you know what they're going through. And I think that's one of the big hang-ups today. We've lost our ability to communicate love, to communicate with each other. In other words, to be happy. A time to gain and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time of love and a time of hate, a time of war and a time of peace. And that word hate jumps out. That God would proclaim there is a time to hate. I love humanity. And it should burden our heart to see what humanity is doing to themselves and others. I can love the object and hate the effects. I hate sin. You should hate sin because it is destroying us as a people and as a nation. The Bible said the nation that forgets God shall be cast into hell. Those are the things that we need to think about. We need to turn over to the Lord. And we need to be happy. Nobody, I don't think, that's thinking right wants anybody to be sad. And we want each other to be happy. To my Christian brothers and sisters, I have enjoyed the ride and the memories, and I wouldn't take anything for it. And if you're sitting here today and you're pushing the limits of your age, you're pushing the limits, and God is still speaking to you, you need to do something about it. When we sing this closing song, you need to get on your feet. You need to step out of that aisle and forget man and man fear and confess Jesus Christ for the remission of sin and buried with him in baptism to be raised in the newness of life. How would you like to be a new creature? You say, preacher, I have a time believing that. You go ahead and believe in that. You'll take it to your grave with you. He said, behold, I make all things new. I change things. I change people. I change attitudes. I change decisions. Now you can do one or two things. If you want to be stubborn, you're still my friend and I love you. If you want to be rebellious, you're still my friend and I love you. But stubbornness and rebellion will separate you from God in this life, and in eventuality it will take you into the throes of hell. Time. How much you got? When's it going to run out? If you're prepared, truly, spiritually prepared, it doesn't matter. I don't think about time. Because I have made my peace, my calling, and my election sure. And you say, how do you know, preacher? I've done exactly what my Lord told me to do. And I'm doing as best I can to remain faithful to death. And he said, Jimmy, I will give you a crown of life. You just got to make up your mind what you want to be. If you want to have worry, you want to have trouble, you want to have heartache. Now that's not to say I don't have some. But see, I got help. I got help to carry it. I got somebody to help me lift. And somebody to carry. I don't know what I'd do if I did. That's okay. You be however you want to. God doesn't twist arms. Why should he? But he'll let his word get inside your mind, and once it gets inside your mind, you're going to have to deal with it one way or the other. You're going to walk off and deny it. Or you're going to say, Master, I need some help. I need my life changed. I've got my life in front of me if you're young. And thus the older one said, help us to use wisely what we've got left. You're going to have that opportunity right here in a minute. And I've never been in a meeting in my life that God didn't speak through His Word to our minds, just as He did 2,000 years ago at Pentecost. When Simon Peter, the first gospel preacher, he reminded him, you went out and killed the Son of God. You took the Son of God and killed Him. And they realized it. You say, preacher, I would never do that. Yeah, you do it every day of your life. You trample underfoot the mercies of God, the name of God, the name that's good, and the name that's right. And we trample it under our feet. And that's why the sermon today will cut just as it did then. We've done it. We've walked all over the mercy of God. We have played the part of the wise man. We played the part of the fool. Somebody said one time the world is a stage and everybody walks across it and we play it out of different parts. But the final play is when the Lord comes to get His people. And the Lord comes to get His church. If it's not worth the effort of being one of His children, we deserve to lose it. We deserve to lose it. It's not going to be God's fault. And so if you're here today and God has spoken to you, you need to do something about it. We're going to stand and sing. You just need to stand on your feet. You need to come forward. I'm going to be right down here. I'm going to be right down here and wait. Because God has spoken to people in this house today, and you have the opportunity. If you've been one of His children and you strayed, we've lost the joy of our salvation. It's dreary. It's drab. I dread to go to church. I dread to do this. God will remove that. But we got to ask Him to do it. And that's all we're going to ask in this closing song. We're going to stand together. And we're going to sing number 632. And again, I want you to sing out. We give the invitation here. I don't like to sing and get involved. Will you come today? If you want your life changed, and you know your life needs changing, let me invite you to do this time.